Hey, what's good, everybody? You know what time it is. Your boy Jeffrey L. Boney here, host of Trending Tuesdays. So excited to be with you for another edition of Trending Tuesdays. We're going to have a great conversation on today. And yes, this is the time to have that type of conversation because your boy has gone wild in the White House. Y'all done gave him the reins and he done took over and did exactly what he said he was going to do. See, y'all thought he was probably playing and, you know what they say, wolf tickets, selling wolf tickets. No, he's for real. In his first week and some change, this guy has done some things that has baffled the mind. But then again, the people the 77 plus million people that voted him in office, he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do, which is quite different than what the people who were in office before, you know, that were claiming that they were going to do what was in the best interest of certain groups in this country, didn't do. And so they lost that power, they lost that ability to prove their point because they had the reins and didn't do much with it, to be frank. But this guy is basically giving them everything that he wanted and then some. And so we're going to talk about that and a whole lot of other things on today. I'm joined by a great group of guests today, and I'm so excited to have them on, man. It's been a while. And I've been wanting to have this conversation with these guys for a long time, but now I get it. 2025 is here and I get to do it. But let's first give it up for our live in-studio audience. Give it up, y'all. We're in the building, and of course, this is Trending Tuesdays. We're here live at the KDITC in the community showroom, K. Davis showroom, right here in the heart of Sunnyside, Houston, Texas. And we're so excited to have these dialogue today with this special guest, these two special guests on today. First, I'll give it up from a seniority standpoint to somebody that's been in the game doing this for a long time. I want to say 30 plus years in the game doing this, man. You may know him if you're a fan of Texas Southern University's sports, TSU Sports. He is one of the voices of TSU football, and I'm talking about, he also has a great show that he's been doing, celebrated 20 years last year.
Of KTSU
Sports Rap. I'm talking about sports talk.
Rap is Ralph.
Sports Rap is Ralph Cooper. Is none other than Devin Wade, y'all. Let's give it up for Devin Wade.
Thank you.
And he'll get more into what his role over at KTSU is at the moment. I know he has some exciting new changes going on in his world. Also, man, I have another gentleman that really probably needs no introduction himself, but I'm going to do so. He's a pastor in the community, but more importantly, you know, he also is in the media world, and he is here to talk to us today. I'm talking about none other than Minister Chris Johnson, y'all.
Thank you, brother.
All right, so let's get right into it. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, and it's a lot to talk about.
You right?
Let's just be clear, it's a lot to talk about. But today, an executive order hit the scene whereby Trump, God, I hate saying his name. Anyway, the current president, Donald J. Trump, issued an executive order basically putting a halt on all federal funding for grants and all programs that the federal government assists. And people have gone crazy, man. It's shifted the whole trajectory of how people run their operations. People that are used to getting direct services, such as Meals on Wheels and various other programs that, you know, are impacting communities, mostly communities of color and low to moderate income communities, the disenfranchised, underserved, are being impacted. And so people don't know what to do. I know there's been a lot of changes in the last few hours and modifications where they said Medicaid and Social Security would not be impacted, but people are in a frenzy right now. So I'll start with you, Devin. I mean, I'm sure you've been paying attention to what's going on. I know a judge just, put a pause to it, put a temporary block on parts of his plan, but a lot of that stuff is still moving forward.
Yeah, and I think, and we at Texas Southern were affected this morning at KTSU, where some of the students on work study had to be sent away because that funding wasn't there. So it's sort of a wait and see kind of situation to see what's going to happen moving forward. This has a lot of ramifications. And I think the lack of humanity and the terror that he's trying to sort of put on the people is just, we don't deserve this as a country. But then again, when you don't fight for yourself, this is what you get.
Well, is it that people didn't fight for themselves, or it's just that more people fought to put him in office than tried to keep him out?
Well, what I will say is And I've said this, and he and I disagree on this because we've had these conversations. I think, they tried to hide behind the economy. They tried to hide behind immigration. It was really all about race and gender to me, and I stick by that. And I'm not so certain of the legitimacy of all of the results. I mean, some oddities happen when you look at down ballot in North Carolina, Pennsylvania. Democrats won all down ballot, but at the top. So people like you voted all Democratic down ballot, but here you went the other way. So again, you could talk about messaging and all of that, but I think people were looking for disqualifiers for Kamala Harris. And I don't think people, I think we have a lack of knowledge of really understanding how the government works. You can ask people basic civics questions and they don't know. And here we are. You see the erosion of funding for public schools, public school education. They're starting to put impediments in the way of higher learning. It is done on purpose because if you have an ignorant constituency, you can take them anywhere you want them to go.
Well, this is a good segue. Minister Johnson, Mr. Chris, I was looking at a reel where this gentleman, this white guy, was going around interviewing people just to talk about the civics or their lack of understanding of civics. And they asked this one white couple, if Jesus Christ, who was not born in America, wanted to come into this country, would you let him? And you know what the lady said? If he had his legal paperwork,
Sure.
then we'll allow it.
Sure.
So we talking about Jesus,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, who died for the sins of the world and mankind. He got to have his paperwork in order to come into America. If you leave it up to her, that's the mindset of some
That's
people.
some consistency.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that there's a xenophobianism that is driving the mood of the country at the time. You combine that with a global populism that we've seen really sweep across the world when you talk about conservative candidates who have now been elected globally in response to governments and societies transitioning out of COVID. And so what we see here in America, in North America, is really, it is a phenomenon, but it is in line with a larger global trend and shift that is happening. And I think that it's important that we view it from a global standpoint. Over 50 years ago, Malcolm X said that we don't struggle against an American problem, we struggle against a Western problem. And so I think it's imperative for us to look at this in light of Westernism.
So I mean, at the end of the day, though, these 77 million plus voted for him for, you're saying, Devin, you believe it was because of race and because of sexism, or race and sex or gender were the driving forces. But my thing is, could it be more? Because he's delivering on things that really, in most cases, don't have much to do with just simply race and gender. Although there's a lot
wait
of
a minute.
No, hold on, wait a minute. There's a lot of DEI stuff. I'm not saying, I didn't, but there are he's had a lot of executive orders that don't have anything to do with race and gender, but they have to do with economics and basically overall control of the current state of federal dollars. And so I guess what I'm asking, is it more of a white supremacy type of a thing, and also a thing focused on money and power?
Okay, so you look at who has his ear right now, Elon Musk. In the first week, what symbolism did he put out there, didn't put out there, with the salute, non-salute?
It was a Nazi salute. I mean, I'm going to call it what it was, but I mean...
And you look at the dehumanization of the immigrants. See, that's the thing. I think we all agree that we don't want illegal criminals in this country. Everybody agrees on that. That's not anything to argue about. But when you put them on camera and you handcuff them and you treat them like, scum of the earth, you dehumanize them, and that has an effect, and that's on purpose, because I don't know that we've seen any, white-skinned people being treated like this. It's all been brown-skinned immigrants that have been sort of targeted. So when you say it's not about race, and then you look at some of the things that have been done, the birthright citizenship, DEI programs. So all of those things, you could say that, but and there are a lot of other things, but ultimately and it's also about the expansion of presidential power. And that's a slippery slope because he's only going to be here for so long. Even if he tries to amend the Constitution for a third term, Father Time going to catch him soon. He's not the picture of health. So at some point, what happens next? See, this is a cult of personality, but what happens next? And so we have to guard these institutions now. And I think at some point they have to devise a strategy to combat this attempt to expand presidential powers.
So, Chris, what's the real deal, man? I mean, you heard Devin's perspective on this, but I mean, what's really going on? Is it race? Is it sex? Is it money? Is it power? Is it white supremacy? What is it?
It's all of the above, right? It is misogyny. It is racism. It is xenophobianism. It is bigotry. But it also is classism as well. The next great struggle in the United States will be a class struggle. It will not be racial. It will be a class struggle. And so, President Trump has mastered the ability to speak to the fears, apprehensions, dreams of a segment of the average American, and I don't say average in a bad way, but of the everyday American. When you look at January 6th, which was a riot, it was an insurrection. When you look at those who have been pardoned, it's very, very, very multicultural, right? There was a report released by the Department of Justice that looked at January 6th, and what they found out in this government-released report is that the coordination that it took to pull off January 6th could only be put on by trained military people. This was coordinated at the highest level of the government. Mm. And so, what we're seeing from Mr. Trump should be no surprise to anyone who read Project 2025. Upon his ascension to the White House in 1980, President Reagan, upon his first day, was handed a manifesto by a conservative think tank. This manifesto contained what was outlined to President Reagan at the time of what would be the then conservative mandate, or what was now known as the New Southern Strategy. And so this is make no mistake, this is a 50, 100-year plan.
Well, you talk about, you mentioned a key figure who has gained tremendous prominence in the White House, in the Trump's administration. He's not even appointed. He's given this title, Doge. What is it? The Director of Government Accountability or whatever.
Sure.
He's been given all of this so-called power and access. I don't know if you all caught what he said yesterday. He was talking to a group, and he told Germany.
Yeah, the far right group.
The far
AFD,
right group,
I think,
that you need to get past your past guilt.
Oh, absolutely.
Over the Holocaust.
Over the Holocaust.
And yesterday was Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Think about this man basically told the oppressors, y'all need to get past what y'all did, the horrific things that you all did to men, women, and children of all races, sexes, sexual orientations, gypsies and all that. You need to get past your guilt.
Right. And if you look at what Germany has done in reference to the Holocaust, it's a model for how we should treat slavery in America. They vilify it at every turn. There's certain terminology. I mean, and obviously we have free speech, so you can't keep people from saying whatever. But certain terms and terminologies and symbolisms is banned, totally banned in Germany. They fight this, and they have remembrances all over. And that's one of the things he said. We need to remove all of this. You have a Holocaust monument somewhere in Berlin, I think, and they want it removed. But this is the model for how you remind people of what was done, who we are, and not to ever go back there. If we did the same thing as it pertains to slavery and the other atrocities that happened here, we would be a lot better off and moved a lot further along than where we are now.
But clearly that's not the intent. I mean, if a man would tell the people
No, that wasn't his intent, but I'm saying...
No, I'm saying Elon Musk, though, he's representative. I mean, look at, he's been elevated
Right.
by the President of the United States to have a voice, have a platform, to have a presence, to be someone that people look up to, not just because of his Tesla money, et cetera. I'm talking about the fact that this man is engaged in government politics. This man is now speaking on behalf of the President of the United States, in essence.
Yeah.
It's almost like what's that name of that movie? Scandal, or one of these White House, what's the other one? With the guy that got kicked off the show because of the sexual problems. Kevin Spacey, I think his name was.
House of Cards.
House of Cards. Thank y'all. Come on, now I need your help. House of Cards. This is reminding me of something like that. Like, how in a million years could we have ever dreamed or expected this would happen again?
If you study Elon Musk's background, you know he's South African, and if you look at one of the unfortunate byproducts of post-apartheid South Africa is that apartheid was gotten rid of, but what it created was almost like a caste system. So whereas apartheid was taken away, which was a good thing, there was still no economic opportunities for those people so the folks who were in the shanties, they still in the shanties. But they're free.
But it was no different than what we had.
Bingo.
So-called integration.
Bingo.
It was desegregation.
But to understand this is to start to begin to get some perspective perhaps into Mr. Musk's worldview. Let us not forget that Elon Musk was a Democratic supporter before he switched over to the Republican Party.
Right. And a lot of him going against Biden/Harris was because he wasn't included in some of the conversations about electric vehicles. So really like petty stuff to say, I'm going to change my home. Yeah.
And so, you know, Winston Churchill told us that in politics, there are no permanent friends. There are no permanent enemies. They're just permanent interests.
So at the end of the day, y'all, I mean, and I want to talk about something I know exciting that was just announced between KTSU and I want to say University of Houston. But before we get to that, you know, there's a lot of, I mean, it's like moving like the speed of light right now.
Sure.
Right.
With these decisions, I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface about how DEI, removing DEI with these executive orders and some of the things that are going after, you know, contract opportunities with the federal government, you know, and how people are rolling back their DEI efforts, like Target, et cetera.
We're being real, right?
Yeah, of course.
I don't understand why anybody is shocked about this because these folk put out a 1,000-page manual.
But
no. A 1,000-page manual
I understand.
that said on day one, when he puts his hand on the Bible from the utterance of "So help me God,"
which he didn't do, by the way.
Yes.
Which he didn't for whatever reason.
He didn't put his hand on the Bible,
but he's in power.
Yeah, he is. I'm just saying.
And so none of this. I was talking earlier with Miss Kay, and I was sharing with her an excerpt out of a book called Night by a guy named L. Wiesel. And L. Wiesel was a survivor of the Holocaust, and he was a part of a remnant of Jewish people who were in Transylvania, and Nazi Germany hadn't invaded them until later in the war, so they thought that they were buffered, that they were safe from the Holocaust until the Nazis got there. And even when the Nazis got there, L. Wiesel said that most of the Jewish population there still didn't believe that they were going to be victims of the Holocaust because the Nazis were so nice until they posted in German, "This is now the ghetto." and started taking their liberties away. And even then, they were in disbelief. And El Weiso said that the biggest thing that happened to the Jewish remnant in Transylvania wasn't their detainment, it was the fact that they never believed it would happen to them, even as it was happening to them.
And that's what I
There's a delusion in this country that only life can teach the populace. Often we talk about the third Reconstruction, but we never thought that it was going to be the third deconstruction. See, this is he's reconstructing. He is reconstructing. Your children and my children will never know affirmative action.
No, not as it was.
Not ever.
right.
Well, I'm not going to say not never, but
They're not going to open that back up. We're going to have to fight for that
But
again.
And a lot of the voters, and one of the things about being a little bit older, we remember what Reagan did, and we kind of knew like how crack came into the neighborhoods. It destroyed the black economy. It was a very destructive time. These people don't. A lot of these voters don't remember that, and so they think these things can't happen. They don't remember. Hey, it can get funky real quick.
I agree with the delusion.
But we are talking.
But
Mr.
I don't
Trump,
believe that we'll never be in a place where it's not going to. It's going to revisit itself. It's just like that saying: if you don't learn from your past, you're destined to repeat it, whether good or bad.
Yes, I agree with you, brother. But with President Reagan, there were certain bona fides in place that he would not touch. We are talking about the deconstruction of the Great Society by Lyndon Baines Johnson, which is set in place for almost 60 years. These measures were put in place a generation ago because Mr. Johnson and a generation understood that you can't legislate morality, but you can legislate behavior.
But see, the thing
And you
about,
have to
hold on,
even
check this out though. But the thing about that 1965, he didn't even want to do that. He didn't want to do the Voting Rights Act, and he didn't want to do what he didn't want to do that. But
correct. But it doesn't matter that if he wanted to do it,
but this
he did
is what
it.
drove him to do it. What drove him to do it was the embarrassment that America was facing because of what happened on that Selma Bridge. When those individuals were caught on video, I'm talking about law enforcement officials sicking dogs and billy clubs and trampling old ladies with horses on that bridge, and it was caught on camera and spread across the world, and people that were just like George Floyd sitting in their houses like, what in the world? I did not know this was my America. And so they had to look themselves in the mirror and say, we got to do something about that. Prior to that act, Dr. King and all of them other individuals visited with him, and he refused to budge. He said, I have other priorities that are important to me and my people. But when that happened, he had to pivot and then make the decisions that implemented those things that we talked about from 1965. So I think that we're going to have to experience another one of those types of moments in order for those that are here today to have their affirmative actions and their various other civil rights movement of the day.
Well, it brings the question of how long will it take to undo what's being done now? And it's going to take a minute. And again, a lot of what he's doing is throwing a lot of stuff up against the wall. He's pushing boundaries. He's going to test a lot of things in court and see what he can get away with. And what you worry about is the other institutions that are designed to provide checks and balances. We can't count on the Supreme Court right now. We're not confident that they won't continue to overturn precedents like they had with Roe. That they won't do things that are so tremendously unpopular with the people. Maybe the good news is you got midterms, but how can you get people interested enough and engaged enough when they weren't for a presidential election?
Brother Jeff, I want to revisit what you just said about that whole 1965, 1964 legislation. You're absolutely right. President Johnson was pressured publicly because of events. But we can say the same about Kennedy, Eisenhower, Truman, all the way back on to Roosevelt. I mean, there has been a consistent, whether Republican or Democrat, a consistent reluctance to adequately address the race problem in this country, right? And that has been countless discussions, man, over generations, right? How will America address the race problem? How does America address the race problem legislatively? How does America address the race problem relationally? How does America address the problem spiritually?
Well, when you
Right.
have one of the richest people in the world, if not the richest, saying move past your guilt, forget about what happened, you think that only applies to Germany? He's in America. So he has the same belief and feelings about America. If you got people that are in power right now that are turning back all of these gains that African Americans made because of the hell that we went through, because of the trying to I guess bridge the gap between, the races, address the race problem. You're taking all of that back and saying, to hell with that. Forget all that happened. It happened. Let's move past it. Let's go down the road. Kumbaya. Well, it ain't going to be kumbaya with everybody. Kumbaya with the people that I roll with. And I don't believe until we have another mass movement, I'm talking about another civil rights movement where people get pissed off enough and they start they not affected. Their money, their freedoms, they're not impacted enough. Now, black folks, I know one thing about us. When we get pushed up against the wall, we going to come out swinging.
Right.
We going to come out swinging. Everybody may not swing, but I know a lot of us. I'm from the hood. I know what I'm doing.
But the problem, here's the problem. Can we unify like that? Because you talk about classism, that's going to be, like I said, the next frontier. You have black people who have more in common with their white neighbors in the suburbs than they do with people that grew up in the hood. So how do you bridge that gap? Because we're seeing, I see behaviors and things that aren't indicative of the struggle that I had to go through to work and sacrifice. And we just think different, we move different, we have different life experiences. How can we bring everybody back together? Because even with our performers now, Snoop and others, they're like, hey man, I'm gonna go make this money.
Well, we got to go to break and allow Ms. Danette Davis to share some words and introduce who she has with her. But I want to touch on that real quick because I was watching a clip the other day, and I'm sure many of us have probably seen it. If you're a fan, follower of the legendary Malcolm X, you mentioned him earlier, where he talked about how in the African American, the black community is the only community where we put our entertainers and our actors and all of the people as our leaders. When we talk about the leaders in the black community, we point to our entertainers, those that are athletes. But when you think about the white community, they don't look at or the Asian community or the Middle East community or the Hispanic community and say, these are our leaders.
Well, and I think, but that is for a very understandable reason in that traditionally it's been our athletes, our performers, our actors that have broken through. You look at Jack Johnson and what he did when he did it. It's somebody that you could point to and say, okay, that he's doing this for us. You look at Jackie Robinson, he's doing this. They were leaders in their areas. So when you have that to look at, to say, Jordan is a billionaire. You look at all of the business opportunities that LeBron has. So in a lot of ways, they have been the ones that have been allowed to go into spaces that a leader, a political leader would not have been allowed to go. Mm-hmm. So again, when all of America was rooting for Joe Louis versus Max Schmeling, that was unprecedented. That was unbelievable. That pointed to, we need to look to those guys, subconsciously or consciously, to those guys, because those are the guys that are going to show the world that, yeah, we can. Cosby, what he did in the 80s, on screen. What he did on screen, he opened doors. He made life better for us in small spaces.
But you know what? When they represented us on the grandest of stages, whether it was the Max Schmeling or the, Jesse Owens, right, or any of those individuals that represented it, whether it was the Olympics, boxing, or whatever profession, sports, Jackie Robinson, when they came back home to be honored, they had to still go through the back door.
Right.
They couldn't come through the front door or even possibly even stay in those hotels and eat in those restaurants. So yeah, although they were those leaders as far as their professions, as far as being athletes and entertainers, they still were treated like second-class citizens. And so at the end of the day, how did they get treated any different than the average man, the politician, the street guy, the garbage
but there was a distinct difference in how they lived their lives.
Well, of course, but I'm talking how they treated.
There were limits to that where the social acceptance by the majority, it had limits. But I'm just saying, if you had seen no other your pastor, your community leader, anybody that you can name couldn't ascend to a space where everybody accepted and applauded them, and the only black faces you saw were athletes and actors. That is sort of how that has evolved through time. Now, I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying these were the examples people saw, and they said that, that's who we rooting for.
Chris, I know you got something. You chomping at the bit to share. Devin, I know you have something to share. We're going to take a break because I have a lot of things that I want to talk about as well, especially when you talked about us coming back together. What is it going to take to unify us or get us back? Because even during the civil rights struggle, there were a lot of folks that wasn't fighting. They benefited, but they didn't fight. Danette Davis, let's take a break, y'all. Give it up for the guests right now, y'all. Come on, my in-studio audience. We'll toss it over to Danette Davis, and we'll come on back.
Oh, my. That was, boy, y'all was starting to see now. Okay. We getting there. I just said, when Jeff, you said that, I said Taylor Swift. I don't know. You said they don't have entertainers as leading stuff and out there in politics, but I don't know. She registered about 500,000 people and by putting it on the website. So they're kind of following us now. I'm going to leave that alone. All right. Hey. Okay. And I love the guests that are there, and I know that they're going to go back and they're going to walk us through how we were talking national politics, but I know they're going to take us to some hometown politics because it's all the same. It all matters. And it all, are we playing, was it chess, checkers, or backgammon? See, backgammon, dates. Some people know what backgammon are. If you don't, see, what I'm saying? You see, that's probably what we playing, right? Okay, I want to introduce somebody to you. Thank you again. This is Trending Tuesdays, and I hope you're having a good time. If you look around for the people that are here in the audience, you'll see this wonderful, we always have some art, right? But on Friday, we had an art show. And this wonderful young lady, this Texas Southern University graduate here in art, has her work on display. Now, this is only one series. And this series is called?
This is Life is Lifing.
Life is Lifing is what it's called. We had folk here. They had a great time. I don't know how much money they spent, but they hung out, and we had her show, and she got to talk about it, share with us who she is, and we're going to bring her back. But I want you to know, and I think, Avery, if you can, and Vicky's going to get some great pictures of the work. She's going to, a couple of the ones that you can see right away, I just kind of want you to give them a little bit about what they have. It's here tonight. We plan to bring the show back. But we're going to reach out and make sure we can have some folk that really may need some things. I think we maybe have you mix another one of your, because she goes deep. This is Life is Lifing. And
yeah, this is just the Life is Lifing series. It's abstract illustration of lived or observed life experiences. So again, this is one body of my work within my portfolio. It is varied because I don't stick to one particular style. I am an illustrator of lived or observed life experiences. And so that's what we have here this evening.
So I want you guys to walk around. And then she has the website, if you got that up.
So the QR code, pulls up the entire exhibition.
Exactly.
So it gives you a description of each work that's listed here. But also I'm here if you have any questions. I can give you more details and share more about the intentions behind the works.
I just want to say it's interesting now, when I was here Friday, she even walked me through, I had to get real close to see the word life because it's raised on here. But she talked about life and all the things that, what is it, birth certificate and marriage license and trash cans and I don't know what this is, a tire she found on the freeway.
It's a tire piece.
Whatever, but it's life lived and things that happen. And then, wait a minute, this very one over here, I walked at that and I looked at it and I said, well, you didn't have to tell me what that was because I see a white picket fence and 2 windows. That's the American dream, Jeff. That's what they sell us. I don't know if he's listening, Jeff. I said, if you look at this painting, and life is lifing, and that one was all confusion and the reality of how we live. Are you listening? I'm talking to you. So, oh, okay. He's trying to get Paula up. I can get Paula straight. Okay, when I say when you look at this, if life is lifing, and you look at this painting, I said she didn't have to explain to me that this was, what is it called?
It's called A Perfect Life.
It's called A Perfect Life. Because as soon as I saw that white picket fence, since I was 5 years old, they told you, with a white picket fence, 2.5 kids, you know what I'm saying? Blah, 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 and all the things that go with it was the perfect life. That's what we all aspire to. Then they threw a baby doll in your arms, and you're supposed to learn, you know what I'm saying, right? So she called, this is a perfect life. But all of her work, I found comes from somewhere inside of her. And anybody who's watching this, and we had a real run last time. The excerpts we did, I don't know if you saw them, the shorts, we got 15,000, 18,000 views on the shorts, and we're gonna do the same thing with this. So it matters. I got some new Facebook friends, all that kind of stuff. So what you say here gets around, whatever. Okay. So this is it for us. But we've got new folk over there on the stand. And I hope at some point Jeff's going to get to KTSU. I don't know. There's so much going on in the world. I get it. Back to you, Jeff.
Thank you.
We're here at the K. Davis Showroom Plus. Such a wonderful facility located right here in the heart of Houston's sunny side, Houston, Texas, 3rd Ward, all up the street. Of course, everybody wish they went to Jack Yates High School, but thank you very much. But some people had to go to Worthing or wherever you went on Scott Street. But anyway, nonetheless, we're excited to have you join us for another edition of Trending Tuesdays. Give it up for our live studio audience. Yeah, they're in the building, of course. We still have Brother Devin Wade, Minister Chris Johnson, and joining us now is a fan favorite of the show, one that is not an unfamiliar face. I'm talking about none other than Dr. Carla Braley. I'm sure she just came from educating folks on political science at the Texas Southern University. Let's give her a round of applause, everybody. All right, let me jump on this real quick before we get back into the heavier conversation of the politics. Devin, can you talk about the recent partnership, I guess, with
Right.
KTSU?
So we have a digital streaming station, The Vibe, Houston's hip hop culture and Houston's culture, and it's designed to attract obviously a different audience from what you hear primarily on terrestrial radio on 90.9, and in an effort for public radio to sort of grow and sort of collaborate, University of Houston is now running The Vibe on their HD3 channel. And they give us an opportunity to widen our audience, but they also get a chance to attract a different audience from what they normally have. And Dr. Ernest Walker is really one of the forerunners in the nation as far as this type of collaboration, and it's reverberating around the country when it comes to public radio stations. That maybe some of the HBCUs can have collaborations similar to that one in different cities and different states. And I think, again, it's an effort with so much uncertainty about where the funding may or may not be cut. You have to find a way to sustain yourself and be innovative. And we're doing a lot of that at KTSU. Some of it is known, some of it is on the horizon. But we have some really great things that are coming up. And that is something that was really, really important for us. And it's the start of maybe some more collaborations in different areas that'll expand our brand, expand our opportunities to reach different people and help them as well. Because again, they wanted this collaboration as well at the University of Houston. So it's a big deal, and it's the first of its kind that we know of when you talk about this kind of collaboration between two public radio stations. So
Awesome, man. Congrats.
Really,
That sounds like some great news, man. So, Dr. Braley, you're joining us. We've been heavy on everything that I know you've been paying attention to over this past week and some change with your new president, Donald J.
My
Trump.
new
Yes, your
president.
new president,
Interesting.
Donald J. Trump. But there were some things that we hadn't even talked about. I mean, of course, we talked about DEI initiatives. There's a lot of federal employees, y'all, that have lost and are losing their jobs every single day. I mean, these people have, vested their lives into their work, and they're losing their jobs. And we have to think about, from a humanities standpoint, what if that's us? We can't just not care. Even with the immigration issue, even regardless of your position on immigration, these people are having their families torn apart, and and various other things. Even those that were born here with the birthright citizenship thing is being attacked. And then another thing of importance, I don't know if everybody's been following one of his it's been so many, but one of his executive orders was him eliminating the Justice 40 initiative. And I don't know if you all are familiar with Justice 40, but basically some of the hardest hit communities in the United States relative to pollution are those of people of color, mostly black and brown people. And 40% of the funds were to be committed to the hardest hit areas in the communities. He eliminated that. He doesn't care about the fact that these communities are around concrete batch plants and other pollutants or things that are providing pollutants in the area. He eliminated that. So, Dr. Braley, you see all this stuff happening. Your thoughts?
Gosh, one, I just have to say this is why times like this we really do need black press, we need black radios. So shout out to KTSU because we're going to need it even more because you're going to have to be even more creative than we have been in the past. And you are very familiar with the journals and all the things that we need to be able to message. Two, I have to address that you said my president, but I'm happy to say that over 90% of black women did not vote in that way. And I do identify as a black woman. And so I just have to get that because I think those are two important things. And then third, I think it's so much. I just finished teaching this evening, and so I'm delighted to be able to join here this evening. And I have a small graduate class on Tuesday evenings, three of which are a part of the educational system. And two of which have told me that as of this week, I have already showed up to their schools. My God. Okay, that's this week. I don't know. Did they ask for over $1 trillion? What was that this week for? And that would only cover, a million, but how many immigrants do we have?
Right.
So when we talk about government waste, let's just park there for a second. When we talk about the amount of executive orders that he's already signed, that means that they have been thinking, they have been planning, like it or not, they have been strategic. And when I teach social movements, I always tell my students that don't ever think that black people are just quiet. Where there's oppression, there's always resistance. You may not be taught it, but you rest assured that there's resistance. And we can look and define it in different ways. And there's been times that when you study history, when black women even were quiet, that was still a form of resistance. The silence is a form of resistance. And to say what we need to do now as a black community, no, in the civil rights time frame, and even before then, the Black Nadir, we were not all on one accord as black people. Policy was all on one accord, because at the end of the day, no matter what your status was, what type of privilege you thought you had as a black American during those eras, you were still referred to as a nigger. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, that was what we had in common. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, and a king, but according to policy, you were still referred to as a nigger and treated as such. Mm-hmm. And we have forgotten that. Number one, some of us don't know our history. And then two, some of us seem to always believe that we have arrived. And with all the gains that we state, I've been saying for a long time that we are worse off now than we ever have been. And that was before we were trumped. Okay, that didn't just happen today. Trump did not just happen today. Trump has been happening. Trump represents whiteness, white superiority. And they're not sitting around a table thinking about how do we harm black people. They're sitting around the table, how do we remain white? And when we realize that, then I think that that sets a different tone and a different strategy what we need. We didn't have every black person that marched, that protest. As a matter of fact, when you study Barbara Jordan, you know, she understood the Constitution, she understood the law. And yes, she did protest, but that was not her thing. She understood the law. She went to law school, she studied it, she was well read, she was well respected. When you talk about a Reverend Lawson, he marched. When you talk about a Reverend Allen, he marched, but he also worked with Black Panthers. We have to know even our local history. 2, this is where it's really important to look at our local leaders right now. Because those who are quiet, those who are not messaging us properly to let us know, look, they're not just here and they don't know about it. Trust and believe. Local leaders know something because they have to coordinate. Well, who's coordinating? And if you are a black leader and you don't know what's being coordinated in the city, then you may not be in the rooms that matter right now. And I would venture to say most of us are not in the rooms that matter on that end. We're going to have to, make our own tables.
Wow, a lot of heavy stuff, boy, that you didn't already.
And I'm so heavy, right now when I think about how, I don't know how many years of schooling I have. That's a joke in terms of how long I was in school. But I went as a first-generation college student on student loans, on fellowships, on federal funding. And I cannot imagine I have a 16-year-old right now who's going to be in college in 2 years. Well, she's a sophomore now. And I'm a single mother. And I'm an educator, so I only make so much. Let's be real. And I can't imagine right now doing what I'm told I'm supposed to do, have a 529. I put, my $2 aside every month that I can. But I probably will need help. So now will my daughter not be able to go to college? I've done most things right. Mm-hmm. We talked about spirituality. We know this evangelist movement is, all about, morals and, morality. So now students who've already started their educational process, what happens? It's just so much out there. I heard, Devin, you mentioned that they're just throwing it out there. What can we get away with?
Right.
You start messing with amendments. Let's just talk. We've already, tampered with women's rights, and not we, they, and they got away with it. How much will they be able to get away with? As much as they like, as long as we sit around and just talk about it.
Wow. Minister Chris, I know you were chomping at the bit before, Dr. Braylon, before the break. Your thoughts on that as well as anything else?
No. Well, first, Dr. Braylon, man, it's just an honor to be sitting and just
I think we
gleaning.
just close the show out right now.
Yeah, we absolutely can. I'm like ready to go home.
Say nothing else, but
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm like ready to go home. But no, I agree with Dr. Braylon. I think that what we're saying again should be no surprise to us because they put it in a 1,000-page manual, and this is the 4th edition of the manual. So this is a built upon playbook that this group of people has been executing for the last 40, 50 years, right?
But they were only able to get away with it from a thin margin. Where was our playbook? When I say our, I'm talking about
supporting a party that does not support black people at all times.
Let me say that I think we should ask the Democratic National Committee that and convention that. Now, you and I were talking about this earlier. There was an article in AP News where the outgoing Democratic National Committee chairman was asked,
Jamal Bone.
what's his,
Harrison.
I mean, Jamie Harrison.
Jamie Harrison.
Yeah,
And Mr.
Jamie.
Harrison, who I hold in high regard along with his wife. If you know their story, you know they have an amazing story. But they asked Brother Harrison, did he have a recommendation for a replacement? And in this interview, he said, not only did he not have a recommendation, that he had a book deal coming out, and in the book deal, he was going to name names about what happened. And while I respect his right to a book deal, I'm thinking, brother, you were just a culprit in the biggest generational political fumble ever. And you talking about naming names in a book deal? And so this, and I'm not saying this for Mr. Harrison, but I'm saying this embodies this prima donna attitude that some of these so-called leaders have. Dr. Julie O'Hare was at a conference in Chicago in 2007, and this clip is on YouTube. She said that there's a difference between black leaders and leading blacks. We have a lot of leading blacks, not too many black leaders.
So here's what I will say. That is the real problem with the Democratic Party. I mean, among many others. It's an all or nothing kind of thing. It's like, well, if we don't get this, every single thing we want, oh man, we're just not going to be involved in the conversation. On the right, they can disagree with 99 things that Trump does, but if he does one thing that they want, they will rally around him. They all fall in line. We find ways all the time to say, well, hey, well, they not doing this for this and this for that. But I guarantee you, we would have been much, much better off 8, 9, 12 days into the administration had we not said, well, we're not getting enough of this, we're not getting enough of that. It's an all or nothing kind of thing where we are so quick to disqualify leaders. And the alternative is what the alternative is. And I'm not saying that you're supposed to push to get everything that you think your community and your people need. You should always. But you can't go all or nothing when the other team is falling straight in line.
Well, but think about it, though. I mean, man, we gave President Obama the White House, the Senate, and the House. And what gains did African Americans directly receive under his
universal health
administration?
care, Obamacare?
Everybody benefited
Okay, yeah,
from that.
everybody did.
I'm
But
talking
disproportionately, we benefited.
I'm talking about black people.
Okay.
What agenda that we have that we presented as, I could tell you what the LGBTQ community presented and got, the Hispanic community presented and got, and what did we directly gain? We had two specific things when we gave President Biden the House and the Senate for his first 2 years. One was the John Lewis voting rights bill, and the other one was the George Floyd criminal justice bill. Neither one of those bills even got a hearing in the Senate and didn't pass. But you can push through everything else.
Okay, so now, okay, along those lines. So what's the alternative? So now we rolling with the orange guy now?
Well,
Because again, I'm not saying that it's right. What I'm saying is, in a dire
You
situation,
gotta deliver. You gotta deliver.
But you think they're gonna deliver?
Yes, they are
When we
delivering.
want impact for them.
Yes, and
But
that's
see,
what I'm
but here's
saying.
the
So
deal.
I think that we have to be clear that there are short-term and there are long-term results.
Yeah.
America has never given black people long-term results. And the short-term results we've gotten is because we have marched, we have protested, and at least during a civil rights movement, even though that was not a transformative movement, that was a reformist movement, and that's why we can see, policies being overturned even now. But at least we were clear that we were fighting for equality, which is something we now know we probably never get in the United States. Black people don't have an ask. What are we asking for? We don't have an ask.
Well, I would always say if President Obama would have landed his Air Force One right here in Sunnyside, and
We
he
would have been
said-
fighting. We would have wanted to know who was in the room, who was going to be able to get the picture
Oh,
I mean,
was gonna say, we were gonna
this
get
is
a selfie.
real, real conversation,
That's real.
here. And at some point, we have to have an ask. And it really has to be that we understand that government is not going to give us revolution. Revolution doesn't happen through bureaucracy. So we're only going to get short-term, solutions. But as we can see what we've gotten in the last 40, 50 years, it wasn't everything, but it was something. Not that we should settle for something, but I think the conversation has to change from what are they going to do for black people, because the same people who enslaved us are not going to do anything for black people.
Right.
So we got to look at this differently. I don't know.
So
if that's me.
we have not had a collective black agenda. It's like the Civil Rights Act was signed into law, and the Voting Rights Act was signed into law, and we got a few things like affirmative action, etc. And it's like we just went radio silent. We had no collective black agenda, no asks, because there were some asks during the movement. That's why the Civil Rights Act was introduced and passed. That's why the Voting Rights Act was introduced and passed. That's why affirmative action eventually came down the pipe, and a few other things. You even had, like locally, and even in Atlanta, you had Maynard Jackson, who said, I'm not giving any contracts to build this airport
Not one.
unless you
Absolutely.
include African Americans on the deal. And that was the only thing he
And
said.
quiet as it kept, Marion Barry. It was a
Barry.
reason why they came after Marion Barry. Yes, he had his challenges, but he was committed to a black agenda in Washington, D.C.
So what's our black agenda, guys?
And that's where the difficult part comes in, because now you have a separation in classes within the black community. Again, we're not all in the same neighborhood anymore. We're dispersed. We have different financial interests. We have different financial.
Because you're in the Woodlands, right?
No.
No, I laugh because we talk about white flight, but we've had black flight.
Well, of course. And so now, like I said, as I mentioned earlier, some of the things that I want may differ from some of the things that they need in different neighborhoods.
But there's got to be something that we all collectively believe is important to our people as a whole.
Right.
What is that? Can we just we come to the consensus that one thing matters to us? Let's just start with one thing.
So what is your one thing? See,
I got a list. I myriad of things.
Okay, but I'm just saying, but we all have that one thing. Again, when you look at some of the things that were talked about in the campaign, you talked about first-time home buyers. Home ownership is important. You talk about different things that could have been done, or the infrastructure bill, and how part of that is even housed at Texas Southern University and managed it, and Texas Southern got money to manage that. That's under the Biden infrastructure bill. You said, well, that helps everybody. Well, no, it disproportionately helps people in minority communities with bad air, exposure to chemicals and unregulated air, because of course before Trump deregulated some of the air, sort of parameters around what these chemical companies could release. So there are things we have to decide, okay, what is our thing? Is it tax cuts? Is it an opportunity to build small businesses? If you're in the middle class, you can use tax cuts. Or how much do we want to commit to social issues and social programs and funding public schools? We can't even agree on how much we want to fund public schools. I mean, there's a big, you got people that say, hey, I want to support public schools, but their kids don't go to public schools. So we can't even get on the same page. Now, one thing that it seemed that we all rallied around was TikTok. And that's very discouraging.
I didn't rally around.
No, I didn't either. But I'm saying, when the one thing everybody got mad about was TikTok. Really? I mean, that was crazy to me. But again, we have to decide what is that one issue, and can we all come together on one issue at this point when we have so many diverse financial interests?
Yeah, I mean, Chris, I want you to share a few words. We're about to close up shop here in a second with conversation, but I could go on, and I definitely want to have you guys back. We all came together when the Popeyes chicken sandwich came out. It was lines all around the corner. We came on one accord, even fighting each other over. But anyway, brother Chris.
Sure. Before we went to break, Devin was talking about Elon Musk and what he said, or his comments in Germany, that they should forget about their collective past. However, to Devin's point, they're not able to do so because the generation before them made sure that the Holocaust was memorialized so that it would never happen again. Several years ago, there was a movement in the United States to get rid of every Confederate statue, every Confederate street, every Confederate name. And the thought at that time was that there should not be a celebration of this culture. And while I agree with that, I'm reminded of the story of the children of Israel in the book of Joshua. Before they crossed over the Jordan, God told them to take 12 smooth stones from the Jordan across the Jordan River so that they would have a reminder for their children's children where God had brought them from. There's a reason we probably should have kept Dowling Street named Dowling Street. There's a reason why we probably should have kept a couple of those Confederate horses up. There's a reason why we should have kept, in my opinion, some of those Confederate monuments up so that we can remind our children's children where we came from. Part of the
I can just show them a picture, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I got some experience.
this is a digital generation, but they really take to it when they can put their hands on it. Most black families at one point were 4 or 5 generations out of slavery, which means I touched the hands, and you probably touched the hands of people who touched the hands of slaves. Right? That's how connected we still are to that experience. And as we get further into the 21st century, we now have a post-racial black America who those experiences are only in black and white, they're not in living color. And so the challenge for us is how do we educate, how do we get back to telling our story to our kids in our home? How do we begin to share these stories? How do we begin to take away the stigma, right? That these were not some people in tatters on a plantation somewhere, that they were victors. Because they got more done 10 years after slavery than we've been able to do 10 years since. We're still standing on their shoulders after Reconstruction, still struggling how to figure out how to do this together, and they got more done coming off the plantation. Why? Because they had unity.
Well, we're different there. But I think that's the wonderful thing why we got to get in the room and have these conversations. We're the only culture that do not have our own cultural schools. Asian Americans, they meet on Saturdays. They teach their culture. They connect with one another. They date one another. That's on Saturdays. Jewish culture, they do the same thing. Arabic, we are the culture that now we have our church. We do. And in all fairness, while the church used to be the most central social institution for Black America, it still has arms in the Black community. It has had to look different and be different, and that is not to take accountability from the church, but we have the church a little different these days. But we're going to have to find a way to do the same thing that has worked. In other words, they have a vision and they have a strategy. And what we're seeing in terms of being trumped in this nation is a movement. It's a social movement. And it is working for them, and that is because they are consciously aware of whiteness and what it takes to remain white in this country. They have a vision of where they're going, make America great again, and they have a strategy. And it started over 50 years, and that's why we see the judicial system the way it is. you know, there's a formula, and we just have to do it.
I just want to say this. Like I said, man, I wish I had way more time to continue this conversation, but y'all have to be back, promise. You know, what you were saying, Chris, I don't think that we should memorialize racism and the things that traumatized our people in any shape, form, or fashion. When I got elected, talk about an agenda and talk about actually taking action. One of the things that many of the people, not just black, but mostly African American in Missouri City, in my district, wanted, and they had been trying to do this for decades. They were living on streets named after the Confederacy. One of the primary streets was named Bedford, well, one of them was named Bedford Forest Drive, and the other one was Bedford Forest Court. And I don't know if you know who Nathan Bedford Forrest was, but he was not only a Confederate general, he was the first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
Sure, sure.
And there were many of my African American residents who would tell me, I'm having to tell my relatives or my friends to come over, oh yeah, make a right, turn left on Confederate Drive or Confederate Court or Confederate, you know, or Bedford Forest. And they like, you stay on Bedford Forest? You stay on Confederate Drive? And it was embarrassing to them. They didn't, it stung that they had to live on the street. They love the community.
Sure.
They love the neighbors, but they had to live on the street named after something so painful to our people. Not them, they didn't go through what our ancestors went through, but they felt that pain.
Sure, sure.
They connected with that pain, and so I made it my point to understand public policy, our ordinance structure, how it went, and everybody else kept giving excuses why it couldn't be done. I talked to our city attorney, and I said, what do I need to do to amend this ordinance? And then she told me, and I was like, all right, I figured out. They had it set up where you had to get 90% of the residents on that street to sign a petition to present to the city in order for us to consider a name change. Well, I was like, that's too high. All I need to do is amend the ordinance. So I got an ordinance amendment, got my colleagues to agree, and we reduced it to 70%. So guess what? They were able to get 70% signatures on Confederate, got all of them changed to Prosperity Way, Prosperity Court, all the Prosperity Drive. But then Bedford Forest wasn't changed because there was one house, one white couple, well, it was several people, but one white couple who were adamant that they didn't want to change it. And they needed one house. So guess what I did? I went back to the city attorney, got another ordinance amendment to change it to 60%.
Sure.
I said, okay, if it ain't gonna work for 70, we're gonna make it 60 because this needs to change. And they were able to change it from Bedford Forest to Liberty Way or Liberty Court. So I'm just saying that it takes us seeing these ills, these wrongs, and not embracing them to fight against them. We got to stand up, but it takes us having an agenda because I could not do it without those residents.
Yeah.
They had to go knock on doors. They had a plan, and they took the ball and ran with it. I said, this is what you need to do. I need your help. Bring it back to me, and I'm going to bring it across the finish line. But we need more black leaders, not just politicians, pastors,
Everyday people.
sportscasters, regular people, neighbors, to make it happen.
Yeah, and Brother Jeff, I want to be clear. I'm not talking about memorializing racism. What I'm talking about, I had a young man come to my pastor. I go to Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church, which I think is the best church ever. And I had a young man come to my pastor, Dr. D.Z. Cofield, and he was writing a paper entitled, Why Are Jews Taught to Remember and Blacks Taught to Forget? And what he and my pastor found, came to the conclusion, is that the reason Jews are taught to remember and blacks are taught to forget is because Jews will never put the education of their children in the hands of those who once oppressed them.
Well, I just
there is a
Gotta say something on that.
There's a tactile side to history, right? When you look at the Civil War, they didn't get rid of Shenandoah. They didn't get rid of Bull Run because they wanted to memorialize what they believe forged this country, right? But the Civil War really was a theological crisis that manifested itself into a war, right? That's a whole nother conversation. And so when you have a generation coming up in a post-racial America, or what they believe to be a post-racial America, Ta-Nehisi Coates talked about this in his book, We Were 8 Years in Power. All of this, what we're experiencing is backlash. It's now even now more important to take the children and sometimes their parents and say, no, here's the place where this really happened.
I'm gonna say,
And I'm not saying we need to keep every place up.
Because I have to say, because even from the Jewish perspective, since you mentioned that, while they remember, they don't celebrate Hitler.
No, I didn't say celebrate.
No. So what I mean by that, but I mean they don't celebrate it, and I don't think that they give a lot of tactile. I mean, it's.
You have a Holocaust Center, right, in the museum district.
Yeah, Holocaust Museum.
Right, you have the Holocaust Museum.
DC,
that lifts up, but it really
But
lifts.
it tells their story. That's what I'm saying.
But I promise you.
And they control that narrative.
But I promise you this as we close. I'm gonna give y'all a minute to share your thoughts. That ain't no Jewish family, ain't no Jewish leaders saying we need a statue of Adolf Hitler so we can take our kids and our families to, so we can remember what happened to our people. Nowhere in the world.
Right, but that's not what I'm saying, brother.
I'm just saying
But
that's not what we need.
But Jeff, that's a mischaracterization of what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying, brother.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that the artifacts that remain from that period need to be preserved so that our children can go to a place and understand where our people prevailed from. Because we're talking about Elon Musk, but them same kids are going to get on his platform X and digest thousands of hours of BS content.
Man, we got to finish this conversation later. Good. Devin, share your thoughts. Then Dr. Braley and then Chris close us out. Or was that your close out?
No.
Now, it was great to be here. Great to have these kinds of conversations. And I will say that one of the things you talked about, you can fight where you are. We talk about microaggressions in the workplace. We can have micro progress in little areas. So don't think that you're helpless. And I think that we have to have conversations with people who just don't know and try to be teachers. We can all teach our neighbor. I mean, because most people don't. We talk about how many people don't have a third grade level of reading. Fifth grade level of reading, and don't have a remote understanding of civics. We can break down and tell away some of this disinformation that's out there, this misinformation that's out there that's fed to us. But again, these kind of conversations are important, and I'm glad to be here. And again, want to encourage you guys to keep supporting KTSU. We are growing. We are doing some really important things, and we are your community station, and we need the community to continue to engage with us because we're gonna be there. We've been there, and we're gonna continue to be there.
Thank you, Dr. Brady.
God is good. Jesse Jackson would say too, keep hope alive. This is a period of history that I think we are going to also want to forget, but we really need to understand it because a history that we don't understand repeats itself. And I think that we need to get prepared, and I think we need to find what our asks are, and we need to get in a room. Competition is not for us, collectivity is. And we need to find a way how to make sure that we are conscious, that we're operating with vision, and that we have a strategy that includes both short-term and long-term here. And we have to do it, and we have to do it today.
Minister Chris.
Thank you. Well, first, Ms. Kay Davis, thank you, and Devin and Jeff, thank you so much for allowing me to sit on this platform. There's a clip circulating around YouTube of cartoonist Aaron McGruder, who is the creator of the Boondocks. And in this clip, and this is a clip maybe 15, 20 years ago, he said that black people had lost the moral high ground in this country. And unfortunately, I believe there is some truth to that. Unlike our forefathers, we have assimilated into Westernism in this country. We view each other through, some of us view each other through a Euro-American racial prism. And while we do fight an external battle, we have an internal battle within our own community. And I believe that this past election cycle exposed on multiple levels threats and opportunities for us to get stronger, as Dr. Braley said. And so I cite a principle of Umoja when I say unity. Unity is the foundational principle in which our people will pull ourselves up by our own levers.
And listen, I just want to just close out by saying, you know, I'm blessed, I guess I'll say blessed, because I get the opportunity to work with this administration as part of the legislative committee through the National League of Cities, as I'm on the national board of directors now, and it's going to be a challenge. We've been on calls all day today talking about these executive orders and the impact on municipalities, city, towns, and villages across the United States, and particularly those marginalized communities that are truly going to be impacted by a lot of these decisions. But I just want us to remember that we must not surrender our humanity
Amen.
in the face of this administration.
Right on.
Regardless of who and regardless of what, we cannot surrender our humanity. We can't say, I don't give a damn about those that can't speak out or care for themselves. We have to be the ones that fight for ourselves and fight for those that can't fight for themselves. So I challenge us, do not surrender your humanity in the midst of this administration and its decision making. All right? All right, y'all, that'll do it. Give it up, our studio audience. Give it up for our guests. Give it up for Danette Davis. We're going to toss it to her. We're going to get up out of here, y'all. Peace.
Oh, boy, what a fantastic panel. We're going to have you guys back. I mean, I love that back and forth. I mean, we get to hear different opinions. I mean, that's important because we're going to have to figure something out, right? Okay, the things that, though, Jeff, I think what we didn't talk about, and I don't know, maybe I missed it, but Chris here has a food pantry.
Yes.
That he operates. He tells me he works in a food desert.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. I have
Just a
the
little.
honor of serving as the director of pantry services at Hope for Family Food Pantry, which is at Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church. And so our operation hours are from 8 to 12. We serve everyone, right? First come, first serve. And we look at everyone as our neighbor clients, right? We understand the challenges that families, working class families are having. The food insecurity, the funding that Councilman Boney was talking about earlier is a real thing. We were just a part of a round table discussion today about the immigration roundup and ICE. Well, these things are affecting places of faith that serve people in food pantries, because guess what? A lot of our immigrant or migrant brothers and sisters are coming to these pantries because that's the only place they can go to get groceries, right? And so now houses of faith are now going to be targeted, unfortunately. And so we serve there, and we're going to continue to serve. We serve with dignity and pride. So come on by, just ask for Pastor Chris, and we'll get you hooked up.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
To add to that, I just want to commend you, because that's going to be even more important. I don't know if you're aware, you all, that Meals on Wheels, it's not happening right now.
Wow.
So it's the small stuff, you all, that's so big right now. So I just want to commit more than any, like, if we don't know these things, we don't even know to go and, target these people to say, look, we're still here.
Well, it's the vision of our senior pastor, Dr. D.Z. Cofield, and the Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church that we be salt and light in a real and tangible way. One of the Achilles heels, we believe, of the church has been its failure to meet needs, and so we try to do that in a real way.
There you go. I appreciate it. We're closing out. And Devin, we will be supporting KTSU, and we're happy to see you with University of Houston. I think that was really important to me because I know the youth, Jeff, that's that next voting wave. They got to get the information. So I feel like, the things you're doing or what have you, and what everybody else is doing is really, really, really important. With K Davis in the community and everything is important. We appreciate the audience that's here. Give yourself a hand.
Yeah.
And the salads have already been placed. We're about to eat, so I want you to come and enjoy Chef Eddie's food. So,
We gotta get a
good night.
picture. We gotta get a picture. I gotta have the same lineup doing Black History. Okay. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. Come on. You're 7 in the morning too early for you?
No. As long as you let me know ahead of time, because I have to make arrangements for Marley.
This is great. Elijah's a
Man,
real
we had a black radio station, bro. It's